Hello, I'm Aspicis, and we're here, or I'm here today. Sorry, it's been a while. We missed two broadcasts, three broadcasts actually. Where I was vacationing south of the border for a while. Anyway, I'm your host today from the Conclave of Art, bringing you some community information to help you decide on where you want to settle within our ranks. For those of you who are new to the channel, we're a community gathered around the upcoming game, the Chronicles of Elyria, a game in development by Soulbound Studios. If you're interested in learning more about this upcoming game, there's a link below to take you to their website. Um, Basically, like I mentioned before, myself and my guest today, we are members of the Conclave of Aratar. It is a duchy within the Kingdom of Vornair, and we're going to be introducing you to members of our community and discussing some topics about our community in the upcoming game, the Chronicles of Elyria. Joining us this week is, as a guest, is the one and the only Tiberius Titus Magnus, our elder of strategy and Count of Simultrian. Um,
Oh,
I tried. You put it there for phonetics, and
the
I
Simultrium. No, I poke
simul.
fun.
Yep. No, yeah, so
No.
how's it pronounced?
So don't worry about the name too much. A lot of people mispronounce it because it's a hodgepodge of words. It's actually Latin, and it would be pronounced simul ut unum, which actually means. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the Latin translation is. At the same time, it shall be one. So we planned around that basically with the idea of working together. Together is one. And that's kind of like the philosophy of our county is that we're all working together as one, and that's kind of my philosophy as the elder strategy is getting all of these different groups working together so that we have effective logistical systems and stuff like that. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah. No, I mean you're racehorse right off the track, jumping right into your son. No, I love it. It's great. It's great. Wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be here with Tiberius. So Tiberius, the way this works is we ask a number of questions. We ask questions about you as a person, about your account package and what you intend to do with that, and then about your position within the Conclave of Aratar. This is going to be a healthy, happy. Interview here. At least I hope so. If we shed tears at any moment, or if our viewers shed any tears, I'm very sorry. But um, we're gonna keep it light. We're gonna keep it easy. So we're gonna ask you a number of questions. So basically, starting off, we want to get into what things about yourself, things about your background, things about your gaming history. So what we like to start out with is, your gamer tag in Illyria and in other games. How do you decide those? What aliases have you gone by, Senior of Strategies?
So interestingly enough, I have had this same gamer tag since I started playing console games. When I was, I don't know, 15 years old, maybe even younger. I went with the name Spartan ATL. Big into the Halo series, and I'm a military brat. So my father being in the military for 31 years, I grew up around military history, and I absolutely loved Roman times and the Spartans and all that other stuff. So I went with Spartan, and most of the time Spartan was taken in video games, so I added ATL because at the time I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. Go figure, right? Pretty straightforward. I was a kid. Um, well, that gamer tag has stuck with me even to this day. Like my Discord name is base Spartan ATL. I have to change my aliases and a lot of other things, like all the COE stuff. So really, the only names I've ever had are Spartan ATL and Tiberius. So Tiberius Titus Magnus, and that's what I have here. Now, the inspiration behind that name is probably way more complex than it should have been. A little bit of an RP swing on that. Um, each piece of that name means something. I pulled Magnus from Pompeius Magnus, who was a big influential character in Roman times. Then you have Tiberius. There was a Roman emperor that went by the name Tiberius, who was very historical, I guess. Or his impact on history was big, good or bad, to be determined by whomever reads his story. Um, and if I'm completely honest, I'm not quite sure. I don't remember where Titus came from. I think I might have just put it in there for alliteration to make it Tiberius Titus Magnus. And you'll actually see that when we do our county interview, when you talk to Vol, he goes by Voldus Veritas Magnus. Um, he wanted to have that alliteration too because it kind of rolled off the tongue. And he's actually got some interesting. He pulls his name from a game. I think you'd have to ask him when we get there. But anyway, so that's the inspiration behind my name. I only have two gamer tags. If you're looking for me in Overwatch or War Thunder or pretty much any other game that I play, it's going to be Spartan ATL, with the exception of some role playing games and anything dealing with the Conclave or dealing with COE. That'll be Count Tiberius Titus Magnus or just Tiberius Titus Magnus, depending.
Yeah, no, that's it was refreshing, hear you hear Spartan a lot in these days. Who in the world has ever heard of Spartans? I mean, they're the name hasn't been used in gaming or in history but it was refreshing to hear your take on going to Spartan ATL, not because of Master Chief and the Halo series, but maybe a closer rendition to the historic Roman roots of that sort of thing. And I like you mentioned your name Tiberius Titus Magnus. It's got this kind of awe-ish feeling, if I may be so crass as to
Mm-hmm.
say so. I imagine as the elder of strategy, when your enemies are astounded at a win you pull off, against all odds. Tiberius Titus Magnus, comes out ahead, and
Mm-hmm.
you're parading past him as
Well, there's something like historical about the name, but also kind of
awe-inspiring.
official, I guess. I mean, it sounds more legitimate than if I were like Tyler Titus Magnus.
That is
Not
that.
knocking the name Tyler, but
Sorry to any Tylers out there listening. Your name is now below Tiberius. You know your place. It's Tyler Titus Magnus, maybe your half brother, from another mother.
the second cousin
Second cousin
removed.
twice removed. Yeah, no, and we didn't get a chance here. You haven't talked, so basically the games you play, I'm looking over and we're seeing Overwatch, War Thunder, Warframe, Elder Scrolls Online, Bless. A lot of these games are very have an active PvP element, whether that's in a physical sense in Overwatch, War Thunder, Warframe, or the Bless and Elder Scrolls have their PvP elements. Is that what generally pulls you to games?
Not really. I have a very broad interest in games. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades when it comes to video games. My interests are all over the place. I could put a huge laundry list that would take up the whole slide in 10-point font of all the different games I've played. Like Global Agenda is actually the game that got me into computer games and the reason why I built the computer. But you've got games like Global Agenda, Eve, Total War Warhammer, both of them. The Total War Rome. I'm looking forward to the Three Kingdoms game that they're coming out with, and those are still they're not PvP, but they're PvE. Big massive battles, strategic thinking. I play Civ. Um,
So you would
um,
would you say then that it's not necessarily the player versus player conflict that draws you to a lot of these games. It's the ability to think strategically, to approach a problem in a way that you feel you're going to succeed.
Maybe there's an undertone of that. I play a lot of games where you have to think tactically or strategically. Dark Souls, Stellaris, things like that, where you're trying to maneuver around other people. So I guess there is an element of that, but I mean, there aren't too many games that exist out there nowadays where you don't have to have some kind of forward thought. You're not. I mean, even back in the day when Pac-Man was out, the people that were setting records on Pac-Man had a strategy of how they do things. So you can find strategy in just about anything, which is why I play a vast array of different kind of games. Even City Skylines, which doesn't have a PvE or PvP element to it, and I guess you could say that it's not really strategic in the sense of combat, but it is strategic in your city planning. You want to make sure that the roads are functioning properly, and that you have your power management done properly, your waste management, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because I spend a lot of darn money on different games because I have such varied taste. But I have very varied taste, so I tend to find a lot of games that I enjoy.
It's spending a lot of money on games. I don't think any of our viewers have ever spent a cent on a video game. No, no, no. Bless represent. Dollars to the games. Um, so, your account in the Conclave of Artar, we wanna get a feel for you as a leader, you as a account, your responsibilities, your style, and so at being a elder of war, elder of under the War Department, what does leadership mean to you? What does it look like to you? Um, um, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. We talking Gandhi-like styles to Hitler-like styles. Who do you draw for? Who what's a good leader? What do you see as as something to look up to or something to aspire to under leadership?
So there are different facets of what differentiates someone from being just a normal person to being a leader to being a great leader. And there's kind of like a checklist, as boring as that sounds. And the more of those that you hit, the better of a leader you are. Being able to identify people's strengths and weaknesses, and being able to plan and work around that, where you turn people's weaknesses into strengths. Uh, if you can do that, then you protect yourself and you protect them. Or if you can't turn a weakness into a strength, if you can avoid having that weakness expressed, that is just as equally powerful. So, uh, leaders that can identify that are very good leaders, being able to place people in the right positions for the best outcome. Uh, at the same time, one of the things that I view in a leader is kind of like practice what you preach, right? Our family motto in COE is Ductus Exemplo, uh, and that's also Latin, and it means lead by example. So everything that happens within our county and everything that happens from my department, from my
We interrupt your regularly scheduled Face the Conclave broadcast to bring you Face the Conclave version 2, now with the new guest Tiberius Titus Magnus back from the dead. He has solved his internet issues, hopefully. Tiberius, if you can hear us here,
I can.
perfect, perfect. I hear, just in news, you've got Comcast or some service provider coming out shortly to solve all of your worldly troubles.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm having a Comcastic experience. They're supposed to come out. Friday was the earliest that they could do it, to come try to rewire everything, because it's weird. Sometimes it won't happen for like a month, and then it'll happen 3 times in one day. And I guess we just got unlucky, knock on wood, that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if Murphy's Law, if it can happen, it will happen, and it will happen at the worst darn possible time. So we were talking about leadership. We were talking about
Yeah,
leadership. We were talking about what that means. You had mentioned your family motto. Did you want to go into
Ductus Exempla. Yeah,
duck?
sorry to cut you off. I
No.
just knew where you were going with that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Ductus Exemplo is our motto, and it's Latin, and it means lead by example, which is the philosophy that we have. Teddy Roosevelt, one of our presidents, for better or for worse, some people would call him a warmonger and all that other good stuff. Um, he actually wanted to lead by example. He wanted to be on the battlefield in front of his people. Um, but nowadays that's a terrible idea because you lose your president and you destabilize everything. But back in the day, there was this sort of like romanticized element of combat, and in feudal times, there was very much that element that if you had a leader on the battlefield that instilled people with a certain morale and could help them fight better, especially if your leader was a strong fighter and a capable leader. Uh, I'm not saying that I'm the best at PvP games or anything like that. I would never try to boast or gloat to say that I am, amazing or anything like that. I don't think I'm bad. Um, but I think there's something to be said about somebody who leads by example, who practices what they preach, and then you can inspire the people that work underneath you. And then to what I was saying before all that, if you can take it that next level and identify people's strengths and weaknesses and put them in positions where they're going to excel, and you can maneuver around their weaknesses or help them strengthen their weaknesses, then that makes you a great leader. And so that's kind of what I strive to do, is being able to identify those things, which really fits into the niche of the elder of strategy, is identifying our strengths, our weaknesses, our desires, putting the right people in the right place to be able to achieve our goals.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. A lot of a very, very analytical approach, a very inclusive approach to leadership. Um, you if our viewers noticed, I'd like to believe I noticed. Maybe I'm making things up at this moment. But if our viewers notice, Tiberius, you got kind of there's a little more action in your voice when you're talking about what you think about leadership, what you think about your role in the conclave, what you think about how your role is gonna interact with the upcoming game, the Chronicles of Elyria. There's a lot of excitement there. So this game, the Chronicles of Elyria by the Soulbound Studios team, it's got a lot of people excited. Got a lot of people thinking, this is something new. This is gonna refresh a not a dying genre, but a genre that some people feel is starting to gray out. It's gonna there's a lot of excitement for the game. So what we'd like to hear from you at this point is, what about the game, the Chronicles of Elyria, excites you? What goals do you have inside the game? Hmm. Laughing my ass off is what he says. Pardon the language. Um, he, we may be bouncing back and forth here. We're gonna struggle through it. It'll give him a moment to try to to try to reconnect here. Um, but basically, the the Chronicles of Illyria is it's a meow. Or it's termed as a meow by the studio. It's an evolving online multiplayer game that is supposed to respond to the impulses, the decisions, the non-decisions of its community. Similar to Eve, the game is not necessarily similar to Eve, but like Eve, it is supposed to be a player-driven world, a player-driven economy, and appeal to the individuals who look forward to having their fingers in those pies, having the control to have an effect when they when they try when they take an action. Um, yeah, yeah. So Tiberius here says he's working on connecting again. We may struggle through this back and forth, back and forth. We'll have to see. But so the Chronicles of Elyria as a game has got a lot of people excited. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're excited about learning a little bit more, there are links in the chat. There's links in the YouTube channel to bring you to the Soulbound Studios website. They've been actually very responsive to the community as a whole. The the different community managers and the developers like to give feedback. One of my fondest memories, I guess, in the Chronicles of Elyria forums and interacting with their development team was while they were still defining what they wanted for a year cycle. Is a year 5 days? Is a year 3 hours? What does that look like? So when they were still defining what that what that is supposed to look like, they had posted a number of forum posts about it, looking for some, community feedback, looking for some information, letting people know, stay excited about the game. And I had commented something, I don't remember, it wasn't terribly childish, but it wasn't terribly well thought out at the same time. And the developers actually engaged in a dialogue at that point. Caspian responded back, and there was 2 or 3 messages between the two of us. And that was touching. Like having the ability to feel like your input towards a game is warrants a response. It's a lot of good feelings there. So Tiberius is still trying to jump in here, trying to get attached again. Um, I'm gonna pull up a image of our leadership structure. You've seen this if you've watched the Face the Conclave in the past. You've seen our um, elder structure in the duchy, the Conclave of Aratar. And I'm just gonna pull this up as experiencing technical difficulties as we wait for him to join in. We'll give it a minute or two, and if he can manage to reconnect, then we'll continue on. I can't hear you as well. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can.
Hello,
Oh, there
are
you
you?
go. There you go. All right.
I mean, your thing just had a green circle around it. So I don't know. I have optimistic undertones, but I am kind of a realist, and I don't think it's right to you for this to keep going out.
We can continue on. I've got no problem with the breakup and the non-breakup. I'll patch together the the feeds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that. Oh, we're here. I'll patch together the feeds. We're back. In the uh, in the YouTube video, so there isn't giant gaps, but it's no problem. All right, so Version 3, Face the Conclave with Tiberius Titus Magnus, the Grand Master of all things chess strategy. Um, I've decided, Tiberius, that every single time you drop, you only come back as part of the person. Um, so it's like traveling into the Never Never, into the ethereal plane, into the an area of the world that is not Earth. And then when you come back, it's no longer you who comes back. A little bit of you's been left behind, and so you started
Mm.
out as Tiberius Titus Magnus, the elder of strategy and the count of the name that shall not be named. And now you are Grand Master of all things chess. Um, anyway, so yeah, yeah, yeah. We were talking about your goals. What excites you about the Chronicles of Elyria? If you wanna go into some details about what about this game is exciting, and what about this game what you want to achieve.
So hopefully we don't get disconnected again. I hope to achieve a good internet connection. That's what I hope to achieve. From COE, there's a lot of things that are optimistic about COE. Now, a moment of real talk, if you will. There are some things about COE that have people apprehensive. But at the same time, those are positive things. An example of that would be the self-funding that COE is doing. They haven't sold out to a big company, so there's not a big company coming in and saying you can do this, you can't do that. We want to cookie cutter this so that we can make money off of it. Blah 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 blah, so on and so forth. So they've kept true to their original identity, but at the same time, we haven't had a lot of content get pushed very fast. And I know the player base and myself included would like to see more content, but we're slow going because of the fact that they haven't sold out. They don't have a huge studio with thousands of people that can be working on things. Um, so, a lot of the stuff that's very optimistic about COE and that excites me are also things that you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. But that said, the things that they want to do, like having a persistent world where there are things that are happening in the world, even if you aren't there, the old saying, if a tree falls in the wood, does it make a sound? Well, in Chronicles of Elyria, it does. That's their inspiration. They want the world to feel lived in. They want it to be persistent, even if there aren't players there. Uh, that excites me. The fact that characters actually have a life cycle, so that if you do have this OP character, like, if you were playing some other game and you had Dragon Slayer 53, maybe there's a little bit of reverence that's said with that name because you actually, on that character, became the most powerful fighter in the known realm, and then that character passes away, boo hoo, it's really sad, his heir takes over, but that name carries on through the legacy of the game. It becomes a part of the history of the game, the lore of the game, uh, which that's something unique that nobody else has really done. Uh, so that excites me to have that kind of a life cycle into your characters and being able to create legacies and there being uh, importance to the characters. There are too many games out there where there's no consequence if you do something stupid and you die, or if you just run around killing people for no reason, and if someone kills you, you're really not losing anything. But in this game, there is that element. There's that point of risk in everything that you do. That if you die, there are consequences. If you save this person, there are consequences. If you do this, there are consequences, and so on and so forth. And that is a novel idea that I really like. And then another big key point that they've made is that as far as questing goes, it's not going to be a grindy experience like other games. You're not going to go out into a field and have to kill 5 foxes. You will interact with the world with the other players, and so they've said that there's going to be some semblance of questing, like there's a destiny that uh, we all have as characters that kind of guide us in a general direction, and there are going to be like events that happen in the world, and I guess you could kind of consider those quests. Like there might be destiny that your character has to save somebody from a natural disaster, and do you do it or don't you do it, and so on and so forth. But there's not supposed to be right now. big quest markers on a map where you have to go kill 20 bears in order to level your swordsman skill and go smack this dummy over here and go talk to this person and that person and this, that person and that person. And I absolutely abhor that. I hate going into games where you have to walk back and forth across the city 5 times to talk to 2 different people because they're having a conversation through you. It's annoying. So that really excites me about COE is that they're diverging away from the cookie cutter and they're trying something new, which you don't see with a lot of games because cookie cutter gets money and they don't want to take risks because a lot of companies that do take risks, they fall flat on their face. But that's usually because when they start to take risks, they end up cutting back. And so they don't fully implement things because they're worried that they're not going to meet deadlines and so on and so forth, and then they get hammered for it. So anyway, that was kind of the long spiel of why I'm excited about it. There's a lot of ideology that the developers of COE have that I very much appreciate. You know, they're wanting to be a standalone, they're not wanting to sell out, they're wanting to create a persistent world, and so on and so forth. As for gold, you know, I'm supposed to have a county video at some point, so I'm not going to talk about my county specific goals. Um, at least not in depth. I think there's a little section later where I kind of touch on my county. But as far as strategic goals as the Elder strategy, you know, it's twofold or 2 parts in my opinion, and they're broken down into sub points. And there's defense, and then there's growth. And I'm not going to read off the slide verbatim. You can read it. But I want to promote logistical systems. So part of having a good defense is, can you move people to the appropriate places when they need to be there, and can you move supplies to the appropriate place? And supplies can be anything from people, armor, food, medicine, or birds. I mean, I don't know when birds are ever going to come up into a factor. Although Genghis Khan did give birds. I think it was like a string and set the string on fire. But he had pulled the birds from a city that he wanted to take over. He told the city, "Hey, I won't come in and kill everybody and massacre you. Give me your birds, and I'll call it a day." The people of the city were like, "Oh shit, he just wants to take our birds. Yeah, let's do that." They gave him their birds. He had string tied to them. He lit the string on fire, and the birds returned home because that's what they had known. And he actually set the city ablaze. So I don't know. Maybe I'll use birds. We'll have to find out.
Give
But
me give me your pigeons. I will take your pigeons and I will return flaming pigeons. I believe the Japanese did something. No, the Americans did something similar with bats and incendiaries. But
hmm
anyway, yeah.
so you never know where inspiration might hit you, and at the same time, having a strong, efficient logistical system can mean the difference. You know, thinking in context of wars of antiquity, one of the things that made the Romans so powerful, one was their size. If a legion got destroyed, they could raise another legion very quickly compared to other armies of antiquity, and they also had a very um, robust logistical system. So their troops could travel across the Roman Empire very fast in comparison to other ancient armies who were moving through hills and forests and things like that. So even if we don't have, you know, the people in the right place when something goes down, by having an effective and efficient logistical system, we can get the right people to the right place and minimize the damage. So, from a strategic standpoint, I want to have the right things in the right place, and God forbid they aren't. We have a system by which we can get the right things to the right place within a timely manner. And that will in turn create a sense of security for all the citizens within our duchy. Uh, and, you know, by extension of feeling protected, you get into elements of growth. Well, if people feel protected in traveling from one place to another, they're going to travel more, which means they're going to do more business to further distances, which means you have more commerce going on, where you might get supplies in your city that you wouldn't normally get because people feel really secure about traveling halfway across the duchy. Whereas before, they would say, well, we're probably going to get raided by bandits, so we're not going to. So it all kind of trickles down from a security standpoint. If you think about what is it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Mm-hmm.
You have a pyramid where you have self-actualization at the top, then you have self-esteem, then you have love and belonging, then you have safety, then you have uh, physiological elements, and you have to build from the bottom up. Well, safety is the second thing on there. You know, you have to meet your basic needs of shelter and food, and then once you have shelter and food, you worry about security. You know, if you're for in threat of your life, you're going to be trying to save your own life, not paying attention to what makes you happy. You know, what profession you want to go into, what woman you want to love, or what man you want to love. Uh, you're concerned about your safety and getting by, and so creating a very secure environment where people don't have to worry about safety, you already move up to the next level, love and belonging, which, you know, realistically, maybe not everybody finds, but hopefully everybody does. Uh, and, you know, you move up to esteem and then you move up to self actualization. So the security is a very big thing that cuts off, what is it, 60% of the pie? So it's important in the grand scheme of things to feel secure and safe. And when people feel secure and safe, they can move up to the next level, which starts to get into growth. You know, people making families, people having um, ancestors. You know, you see in movies all the time where people say, "Well, I don't know if I want to bring a child into this zombie-infested world." You know, if you're so concerned about death and destruction around you, then you don't want to procreate. You don't want to, you know, bring an innocent infant into that kind of world. It hampers, you know, promiscuity and things like that. So anyway, that's kind of the goal: security, and then having that kind of security and having that feeling, or the populace having that feeling, should promote uh, intermingling, we'll call it, and commerce on the back end of things. So defense and growth. That's what I hope to achieve through my policies and me sitting in the seat of elder of strategy.
Very, very in depth. I liked it. It was very good. Yeah, defense and growth. It was a very. I felt like that was a very oh, what's the word I'm looking for here, Tiberius? Maybe you can find it in Latin. Analytical approach to, the responsibilities. You're using established ideas, established means, and incorporating them into your leadership structure, the ideals by which you act. Very refreshing. And
Well,
you
go
was it?
ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
said
You were
no.
asking me the Latin word, and I was thinking like analyticae. I think is analyticae. I think something like that. Sorry.
If I ever have the need to summon one of the denizens of the underworld, I think, your Latin is going to come in very handy. Um, so you've touched on this throughout the interview thus far, and we're gonna briefly go over it again just to use our last slide that you've prepared and to get a little more information about your county and specifics. Like you said, you want to have another presentation similar to this with the mayors and the different members that you've established inside your community at this point. And so we're going to go into, what the vision of your settlement is. Or sorry, the second to last slide. Vision of what your settlement is, and so who do you have involved with you right now?
Uh, who do I have involved with me?
Yeah, yeah. Tell us about your community. Tell us about the mayors that are interacting with you, and tell us about the county
So,
size and biomes, stuff like that.
as far as the mayors are concerned, I've got two very important mayors within our county. I have other people that haven't committed yet. There's a lot of that going around, people trying to test the waters, which I tell everybody: find the place that you fit best. Um, but I have Jedzia, who is actually one of the interviewers, who does these interviews with the different counts and elders and so on. She's actually a mayor within my duchy. I'm duchy, sorry, county.
Oh,
uh,
moving up in the world, Tiberius. Sir
and
Sir Tiberius Titus Magnus, Duke of Duchy, whatever you want. Anyway, continue. Continue.
so we have Jedzia, and I also have a mayor named Kanak. Uh, Jedzia's concerned with trade and things like that, and then Kanak, he wants to get into being a location where new players coming into the game can have an assistance, a certain level of assistance when they join the game. So he wants to have a large orphanage, so that hopefully he pulls in a lot of new players, and then it'll help try to get them through early stages of the game, like having low-level crafting stations and stuff like that. A very noble cause. Uh, Now we do have a double county, so anybody listening to this who wants to have a conversation about joining a sort of a Roman Latin themed environment, feel free to reach out to me, um, or Count Voldus Veritas Magnus. He's my co-count. Um, we're actually, I already said this, we're a double county, so we have a lot of space. We have a lot of individual people, so we don't have that many mayors that have committed, but we have a lot of individual citizens, we'll call them, who have expressed interest in being a part of the county. One of which, she goes by the name Go Go Pogo Girl. Fantastic woman. She's actually in medicine. Um, she's lovely to be around. I forget her name though. She chose a French name, and bless me, I can't speak French to save my life or remember it. But I've played many games with her. We have quite a few people within our group who have played a lot of games with us in the past that have been a part of organizations that we have been a part of. Um, but anyway, they're talking about coming in, and then we have quite a few people, and the vast majority of people that have expressed an interest haven't really pulled the trigger yet. Um, they're kind of sitting in the wings, and they're waiting for more material to come out from Soulbound Studios, which kind of hits the point that I was talking about earlier, where we're all waiting for content. Um, and many of them are PvPers, and they're worried about the combat system and what it's going to look like, and there hasn't really been any information. And so a lot of those people are just kind of sitting, waiting in the wings to see if they're even going to buy into the game. And they won't make their decision until they see something that's PvP focused or understand how that's going to work. Um, so that's kind of that in a nutshell.
Yeah,
To Go ahead.
good. I'm just gonna interject here. So you're describing your county. Basically, I've got the slide up here on the
Hmm.
stream, and there's a few, notable items that you've added in on here, that I want to give you the opportunity to talk about. And I think the most interesting, well, for those of us older than 21 or 18, if that is the location at which you can start drinking, there is an Oktoberfest. What do you imagine that's going to look like in your location?
If you don't mind, I would like to start from the top of the list just to
Oh,
kind of say a
okay.
little something on everything.
Sure, sure, sure. Go right
Um,
ahead.
the Oktoberfest is kind of like the fun-loving thing, so it's nice to have it at the end.
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
the
We'll start at the beginning, and this I think touches into the race and biome a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit about that if you have any intentions there. But you want to be a spearhead county. Tell us more about that.
Yes. So what I mean by that, uh, if you come to the Conclave of Artois, again French, can't do it. Um, if you come to the Conclave and you're finding a county to go to and everything, if you know anything about land selection, I have the highest influence in the duchy right now outside Duchess. And I did that for a couple different reasons, and it hits a couple different of my points in there, one of which being the Spearhead County, and the other one being the largest and best road system. Uh, to talk about the Spearhead County portion of it, I want to be on the leading edge of our duchy, where we are touching a foreign border, and that's not necessarily a hostile border, not necessarily a friendly border. That'll be dependent on what kind of map layout we have and so on and so forth. But I get to make that very educated decision because I get to pick first. I basically can pick the best, most ideal position for me and the people that are part of my county that have backed my county already. But in the picks that we have made, I have been on sort of the leading or one of the leading edges. If you think about north, south, east, and west, I have been at one of those points on the edge of our duchy. Um, and part of that is because I like some PvP. I don't have to do it every day, all day. But I do like some PvP. I have people that are with me that like PvP, and so it would be nice to have some of that element. Plus, if there are any opportunities for expansion, that's going to be at the edges of the duchy. Um, and then, thirdly, going into the next point, I want to have a trade hub in my county, preferably out of the city of Aquitania, which is our capital. Uh, that trade hub being on the edge of the border is a good thing because that promotes travel, it promotes commerce between whomever you're on the border with. So people within your county, people within your duchy that are close to you, but it also means people in maybe allied duchies that are close to your city, and that also means people from foreign kingdoms who may be close to your city. Even if you're on a hostile border, and there you have some security concerns that you have to take into account. But even there, you can still get some people that want to come across the board and they want to, exchange goods, so long as there's not some kind of like embargo or blockade. Uh, so wanting to have a trade hub within my county to promote commerce, being on a border is a very important thing to hopefully get different kinds of wares and blueprints and any kind of good you can think, textile or otherwise, from different areas. Not only that, but being on the border of a duchy might mean that I'm in between different biomes, and so you might be able to get uh, a very vast array of items that are present in different biomes. So, if I'm on the edge of our border and I'm Niran and I'm on the edge with Genoa and Kipik, well, they're going to make different goods than what the Niran are going to make. And so, being in that sort of melting pot location, you might have a lot of variety, which can be very important in a trading format. Uh, Now, moving down to the next point of largest and best road system, that's a big drive that I have. And I have a lot of EP in this game, and my primary reason for that EP is to create the most robust logistical system. And this touches back on what I was talking about is the Elder of Strategy, where I wanted to promote logistics and figuring out what's the most efficient way of doing things. Within my county, I plan on connecting all the major cities with roads right out the gate. And then with whatever roads I have left over, I'm going to start connecting other things in kind of like a Christmas tree effect. Start from the top and spread yourself out as you go down. Um, and so I want the roads to be nice, well managed, and in some games they provide movement speed bonuses. So people that are within my territory will potentially have these movement speed buffs, if you will, which can in turn help commerce, help defense, help all kinds of different stuff. So a large, robust road system is very important to me, which I need it to go into the next point. So the Coliseum of Aquitania is a project that I have right now to build a Coliseum. That way, there's always a home for PvPers. We might not always be at war. We might not always be able to raid somebody, or we might not be in a position where we can do any kind of raiding on any foreign parties. So, having a place where people can PvP to their heart's content can be very important and decrease the amount of griefers that you may have. In having a Coliseum, you can even set up tournaments and things like that where maybe the Coliseum of Aquitania gets known for having the best mercenaries. And if you need to hire a mercenary company, you go to that Coliseum to find the best fighters that are out there. Uh, Additionally, one of the things that I want to do out of our Coliseum is I want to host kind of like the Olympics or the Super Bowl of fights. I would like to, as the game progresses and things get a little bit more efficient, sit down with counts and maybe even other dukes and try to put together maybe 5-man, 10-man PvP groups from each county or each duchy, their best fighters, and then they travel to the Coliseum, once every, I don't know, 5, 10 in-game years, and they fight each other, and it's a source of pride that, oh, we're the best county, we won the Coliseum of Aquitania tournament of 2016 and blah blah blah. again promoting commerce and all that good stuff. But you also have to have a large road system. So all of our points kind of feed off of each other. And then the last one, the Oktoberfest. So I'm a fan of beer. My favorite beer for anybody that's interested out there is actually Yingling Oktoberfest. Um, yeah, I love that beer. I can't really say anything else about it other than it's the most fantastic beer for me. Um, but I love Oktoberfest themed things. I also come from a German background, so that helps. Uh, but to give an example, in the most recent promotional event that they had, they actually sold beer gardens, and I bought my fair share of them. Trust me. And so, one of the things that I want to do is every so often, I actually have a document drafted right now, but it's not published, so I can't really speak to it because obviously the game's not out. We don't have mechanics, so I'm not sure how far it can go. It's more of a teaser than anything else. Um, but I want to host a tournament, a series of tournaments over like a 5 day period, and call it this Oktoberfest or a Fall Fest or some other word that might be from the game when it comes out. Uh, that will bring in people from all around, from outside the duchy, inside the duchy, where they can come and they can experience, like beer competitions because you're supposed to be able to have beers. Count of Oldest actually wants to be a tavern owner and he wants to develop a beer. So we could have competitions relating to different beers and like what the best buff is or, things like that. And then in between those kind of like competitions and just hanging out in the beer gardens and having fun and RPing for those that want to RP, you also have these scheduled tournament events that I've already lined out with individual competitions. Then there's group competitions, and then there's like the Mac Daddy Super Bowl type portion where it's county versus county or duchy versus duchy if it ever gets to that point. So between these different style tournaments, you have this fairground you can go to where it's just beers and brats, and I just think that that's a fantastic idea. Um, maybe I'm tooting my own horn a little bit, but I love beer and I love brats, so why not?
Yeah, no, and so sticking with the alliteration, as you were talking, I was like, beer, brats, babes, and boo boos. This is a great. It's the name of your tournament: beer, brats, babes, and boo boos. The four B's. Um, yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. Like pulling everything together, the different elements that the game can have, the PvP, the RP, the economy, all into one location. You've thought about this a lot. That's a very healthy thing. I think a lot of people appreciate that. And what more or what less would we expect from the elder of strategy? You've got your strategy. You've thought about these
Hmm.
things. Um, yeah. So
Now,
it.
to do a shameful plug in here, it's a big feat. It's optimistic, and I need people to help me with it. I have no delusions of grandeur. There are people that have great ideas, and I'm looking for people who share that kind of interest, would like to do something like that, and I'd be more than willing to seek out some kind of venture. Shameful, shameful plug over.
Shameful plug over, and no, and I'll reinforce that, right away. That's like that is the purpose of a lot of these movies is to get these interviews or get names out there, get some media out there for people to recognize, whether it's right now for those of you who are watching, or those of you who are yet to be watching in the future. You know who you are. Um, there should be chat links. There should be links in the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel, where you can go and you can check out Fornier, you can check out the Conclave of Art, or you can check out the Chronicles of Elyria if you have no idea what we're talking about. Tiberius, you talked about influence and you talked about EP inside there. I just want to circle back real quick, just for those of you who are new and don't have any idea. When Tiberius is talking about influence at the beginning, yes, he's an influential individual, sure, but what he's talking about is a currency that the game developers are currently using to help assign who gets to pick things first. Think if you've ever played Risk or other games that have land management, how do you decide who gets to choose the first kingdom, the first county, the first tree? That's what he's referring to with influence. And then he said EP. And EP is exposition points. It's the game designers don't have the intention to pre-populate the world with every single city that you're ever going to see. They want to leave that free to the gaming community that will be interacting with it. And so individuals who have invested, who have been excited about this game at this point, are rewarded with exposition points with which they can mold their town, their county, their duchy, their kingdom into something that is palatable to the gaming audience. Um, anyway, we were saying, you're being very strategic, you were being very clever there, we would expect from the Elder of Strategy. We're going to go into a quick section towards the end here and talk about, what that means, what the Elder of Strategy is. You talked about it at the beginning. We're going to reinforce it right here. When we say um, chess master Tiberius Titus Magnus, what does that mean? What department are you in? Tell us a little bit about that.
I will in a second, but you said something that I wanted to touch on, just for anybody who's new to the game, or who's new to these videos that doesn't know Chronicles of Elyria and all that, and they're listening to what I'm saying. One of the things that you mentioned that I didn't think about when you asked me about the developers and what I'm excited by. One of the things that I'm very excited by, and a lot of people that are buying in early, is that we get to make the world. So you said that they're not going to pre-populate everything in every city and so on and so forth, which is true. They're going to build like a framework, a skeleton, and then it's up to us, the backers of the game, to come in and flesh out that world. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are excited about, is that I get to build the buildings, I get to make the walls, I get to, if I am interested in RP, I can go take a tower, put it out here, and knock half of it over and say, that used to be a fort that was attacked by such and so's date. Um, and so we get to create the world, and I think that's a fantastic element that you don't get to see from a lot of games. And I get to play with the world and build it the way that I think my city should look. And so anybody who's interested in feeling like they're a part of the world or anything like that, I highly recommend looking at this game and considering possibly backing at a mayor level or higher, so that you get to interact with the world in that kind of way. Uh, Now, to get back on track, because I'm long-winded, so I gotta redirect myself so that we stay on task. The War Department. So the War Department has 3 people right now. We have room to expand. We're looking for an Elder of Armories, which I won't touch on here. Uh, but we have the Elder of Tactics, and we have the Elder of Strategy, and then we have the High Elder of War. If you watch this series, you've already met the High Elder of War. That would be Blob. Uh, a fantastic gentleman, very organized, very forward-thinking and go-getter. I mean, he's involved in a lot of things. If you've listened to the video, I'm sure you can get that. He's charismatic and bright. Uh, Myself, not so much. Maybe not as charismatic. I'm a little bit quieter. Sure, you can't tell. I tend to be more long-winded when I'm in smaller sessions. So Aspissus and I just talking back and forth. It's really easy for me to converse. When you get into large groups, it gets to the point where I'm used to PvP games where you keep comms quiet unless you have something important to say or you have a call out or something like that. So I tend to keep the channels relatively clear when I'm in large groups. Um, but anyway, so we've got the High Elder of War, who's Blob. We have the Elder of Tactics, which is Amory, aka Turtle, who you'll hear from at some point. Um, and then myself as the Elder of Strategy. So I answer to the High Elder of War, obviously. He's my or I'm his direct report. And my tasks are high level. We'll put it that way. Very high level and strategic. Not to use the word in the definition, but that really is what it is. So I'm looking at what are our duchy's overarching goals from a military standpoint. Do we want to have security? Do we want to be able to have fast counterattacks, strong counterattacks? Do we look at this border and say this is a threatening border? Do we look at this one and we say this is a is not a threatening border, and so on and so forth. And where do we want to allocate resources? Uh, how do we strategically want to set up our armories, our barons, and things like that? And so I have a very high level, top down. Um, think of Rome Total War. Like I see the whole picture, I see the map, and I'm trying to think of, okay, well, we should have these people over here and these people over here, and oh, well, this conflict over here is causing problems, and well, they're using cavalry, so let's pull in pikemen, or oh, they're using swordsmen, let's bring in cavalry and stuff like that. So I'm thinking high level, um, versus the Elder of Tactics, who you'll meet later, is on the ground level, if you will. I'm saying send these units here, and then it's up to those units to do their job. I tell them this is your goal. Go take this battlefield. Go protect this location. And then it's up to them to go do it. I'm not micromanaging anybody. I'm not telling anybody what to do. Well, I am telling people what to do, but I'm not telling them how to do it. That is up to them, and it's in my personal opinion. Talking back to one of the earlier points about a leader being able to identify strengths and weaknesses, it would be a weakness for me to try to tell somebody how to fight. If you have a PvP group that's out there and they've worked together well in many other games and they have a certain way that they fight on the battlefield that they know, if I try to tell them to do it a completely different way, they are operating suboptimally. And that could lose us the day. So I need to be able to identify what are their strengths, what are they really good at, and then capitalize on it rather than trying to tell them to do something else. Like, I'm going to put you in this scenario because I think you counter their kind of philosophy. Do it. And then it's up to them to actually, on the battlefield, make the commands, make the calls, operate, and achieve that goal. Uh, so I'll be assigning FOBs, which are forward operating bases, AOs, area of operations, as well as strategic and tactical objectives. Well, we want to get this we want to capture this granary. We don't want to lose this battlefield. We want to maintain this ridge line, so on and so forth. Um, I'm in charge of the overall overarching goals and then the wartime goals. So they are two different things, because our overarching goal, like I've said earlier, at least mine, are defense and growth. Creating an environment where people feel protected so that they can grow, and creating the systems that we need in order to give people that feeling are completely different from what happens in wartime. In wartime, it's about grabbing this asset, which assets are acceptable to lose, which ones aren't, uh, crunching numbers, so to speak, and trying to figure out what is the most optimal path of going about something. Um, then, from a boring standpoint, I draft and push a lot of documents within the War Department. Uh, so I've come up with several different policies. I've helped with several different policies. Um, Trying to think if there are any that I can speak specifically. We have a lot of stuff out there. Like we have the war manual. If you become a member of the Conclave, you'll get to see some of these things. Our leadership program, how we're going to promote people to generals and majors and so on and so forth, and what benefits they get. I had some input on that, although that was Blob's brainchild. He pretty much drafted that whole thing, and he got our department's input and feedback. Um, but there's a lot of that kind of behind the scenes, pushing papers and tallying things. I've come up with invoices and order forms and, logs to be able to track movements of shipments and things like that. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
just
I think a good description, and I don't know if this imagery suits you or not, Tiberius here, but I'm imagining a burly armed warrior wearing nerdy glasses. You know, at the same time as you're able to fulfill the combat needs and understand those, you're at the same time very aware and cognizant of what is required in areas that are important and AOs and FOBs and all the other tactical objectives there. You mentioned different uh, documents that you worked on, and we may in the future release some fun little videos, little short blobs of information for the public, um, just to get people excited about the conclave or the duchy
Hmm.
or the game in general. But yeah. And then you've got last field commander in the duchy. I like that. Once again, I think that's the big muscles, the strong, awe-inspiring name that you have. Um, I don't know how often we imagine that a field commander will be,
Hmm.
how often you'll be taking that role as opposed to other roles, but I think it's a
Probably barely.
yeah, I think it's an interesting review of what the War Department and what your position as the Elder of Strategy
Hmm.
indicates
So,
is probably going to
uh,
happen.
Not TJ, Turtle, Amory, when he gets in here, the Elder Tactics, he will talk about some of the stuff that he's working on, which will make it a little bit clearer what battlefield command and all that is. Um, that is something that I can do. That's something that Blob can do. That's something that Turtle can do, and Turtle will be doing it more than either of the two of us, possibly. Although Blob has specific interests that he wants for his county, so when he does his county interview, I'm sure the audience will hear that. Um, Again, my goal is more the high level objectives, and so even though I have the ability and the right to lead on the battlefield, it's probably not going to happen very often, not in a large sense. If we ever have any conflicts, duchy versus duchy, kingdom versus kingdom, or anything like that, I probably won't be involved with that level of combat because I will be stuck in a room somewhere looking at a map on a table. Um, but from a low level perspective of like my local baronies or something like that, I talked about Teddy Roosevelt leading from the front. Like I would love to go out with a band of men and go raid something real quick, and spend a day of just PvPing something and getting away from the grind of working on documents and things like that. Uh, so I can, but you probably won't see me on the battlefield very often because I have to be in the office, running the numbers.
Yes.
Um,
So we'll change the imagery from a strong, burly lumberjack like image to a fit yet slender individual, still wearing glasses, but maybe you have a machete across your back or something. You're dangerous but nerdy. Yeah. So we're gonna try to transition here um, to our outro. We've been doing this for it's been a little over an hour at this point. We try to keep them, to a digestible length.
mhm.
But yeah, so before we get to our goodbyes, I just want to let our listeners, whether they're present or future listeners, a quick reminder that we, the guests and hosts of the Face the Conclave, hail from the Conclave of Aratar. If you or a friend is a part of the Aratarian community and wish to have a similar spotlight for your group, your school, your organization, town, or county, reach out to Jedzia for scheduling. We'll get you booked in somewhere. If you have a topic you want to talk about with the Illyrian community, the the way that Tiberius was talking about how his city wants a Coliseum and an Oktoberfest and different stuff like that. We may go into a future video, promoting that sort of thing. Be it, so if you want to talk to the Illyrian community at large, be it about crafting or politics, the economy, the deviant lifestyle, PvP lifestyles, reach out to me, Aspicis, and we'll put something together to discuss in this media form. So, without any further ado, this has been Face the Conclave with me, Aspicis, your host, and the chess master Tiberius Titus Magnus.
A bit thick.
We'll see you next time.
And remember, folks, ductus exemplo.
Ductus exemplo. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.